Welcome back, everybody, to the Seattle Sonics, MyNBA franchise, here on NBA 2K22. Today's episode is a pretty big one. The 2024 NBA Draft is here, and despite making a deep playoff run this past season, our Sonics will be selecting number 7 overall thanks to the LA Lakers. That pick was originally projected to go number 1, but we got shafted by the draft lottery in the last episode, and unfortunately it fell to 7. Along with the lottery in the last episode, we did a number of other things, including introducing ourselves to the 2 new expansion teams, the Montreal Royals, who stole Kevin Porter Jr. from us, and the Mexico City Capitanes. The NBA has clearly decided to broaden their horizons, adding 2 new international teams to the league. We also refamiliarized ourselves with this draft class in the last episode. We learned about a number of these prospects throughout the season in prospect profiles, but it was good to go back and continue to assess and evaluate these guys as we figure out what the Seattle Sonics are going to do. Not only do the Sonics have a very high pick, and we had to go over the blue chip prospects, but Seattle also has the 32nd pick in the first round and the 19th pick in the second round. As we take a look at the mock drafts, Uzama Chukwumereji, the center out of Georgetown, was a very popular pick to Seattle at 7. That would make a lot of sense, and Seattle does need a center. It seems like the popular number 1 overall pick is Antoine Ingram going to the Dallas Mavericks, although he's not a great fit. He could be an option for them. If they don't go Ingram, they could look at somebody like AJ Alexander, Sensio DeSico, or Minka Afemefuna as possible number 1 overall picks. The only mock draft that did not have us going with Chukwumereji had us getting Jamar Sherman instead, and that's because they had Chukwumereji going all the way at pick 3 to the Utah Jazz. This is a very fun draft class of a lot of ultra-talented and unique players, and you at home can use these guys. If you're on PS5 and you type in Sonics Draft 3 into the draft class vault, it should be available. If you would also like to use the previous draft classes for this series, just type in my PSN, and the first 2 draft classes are there at your disposal. One more task before we get to the draft, and that's talking about some trades around the league. We've got some major movement throughout the NBA and some big names finding new homes, including Jimmy Butler, who is on his way to the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Miami Heat are really, really bad. They kind of need to start a rebuild, and Jimmy Butler at 34 years old isn't going to get a whole lot better, but he is still an all-star caliber player, and he can still fetch a pretty good return. So the Miami Heat are going to get quite a bit back, including Zaire Kanye, talented athletic forward who was a lottery pick last year, Turbo Magoo's, a young solid center who was also a first rounder a year ago, along with the 15th overall pick and some future selections down the line. I think this is a win-win trade. Oklahoma City gets them a veteran who can help their young core win now, and the Miami Heat get some pieces to jumpstart their rebuild going forward. The next trade isn't quite as big, but it is fairly significant. Jonathan Isaac is headed to the Charlotte Hornets in exchange for a young forward in Otto Prince, who was recently a first rounder, along with the 18th overall selection and some future seconds. So the Hornets now have Rudy Gobert and Jonathan Isaac. That's got to be one of the best defensive tandems in the NBA, added on with all-star LaMelo Ball. That's a nice little core that Charlotte's got going. Desmond Donovan was the 7th overall pick last year, but he's in a very crowded backcourt in Houston. They don't really need him. A team who could use him is the Portland Trail Blazers, so they are going to send the 10th pick and O'Shea Brissett to the Rockets for Desmond Donovan and the 23rd pick. So Houston gets to move way up in this draft, and Portland gets an outstanding young guard. Our Seattle Sonics do have some options in the trade market if we choose to go that route. Cam Reddish, Kyril Story, and Chance Dumas are all eligible to be traded, along with all of our future draft capital, including number 7 overall. We could always go out and make a splash. Brandon Ingram, Jason Tatum, Bam Adebayo, Jamal Murray, and Michael Porter Jr. are all options for us if we would like to go out and get a star today instead of picking a rookie. There's also Giannis Antetokounmpo, who could be the big wild card. The Milwaukee Bucks roster outside of Giannis is absolutely dreadful, so should they look to start a rebuild, maybe Giannis is available and we might have more ammo than anybody to go out and get him. So let's open this show on the road. The 2024 NBA Draft is now officially open. The Dallas Mavericks will lead us off. With the number 1 pick in the 2024 NBA Draft, the Dallas Mavericks select Antoine Ingram from Chaminade Prep in St. Louis, Missouri. No surprise here at the number 1 overall pick, as many scouts viewed Ingram as the top player in the class, and I can't really say I disagree. Ingram is a phenomenal talent, coming in as a 79 overall, tied for the highest rated player in the entire draft class. He's a gifted offensive player, can score from all 3 levels, he can play make, he can defend, and he's a good athlete. I'm not sure how he's going to fit with Luka Doncic and Bradley Beal, but as I like to say, good players make it work. Dallas picked the best player in this draft at number 1 overall, so you really can't fault them at all. That'll bring us to the Boston Celtics at 2, looking for some more star power to join forces with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, as they will end up selecting Duncan Hayes from Washington State. Welcome to the draft, everybody. I don't think anyone expected this whatsoever. The Boston Celtics had numerous blue-chip talents on the board, and they decided to go for pretty much Duncan Robinson if he was on steroids. Now, this is no disrespect to Duncan Hayes, because he's a fantastic basketball player, but he was not supposed to go until the back end of the lottery. You know, if the Boston Celtics had stayed at like pick 10 where they were projected to be and picked Duncan Hayes, I wouldn't really have a problem with it. But here at 2, you have the chance to get somebody who could be an all-star or all-NBA level talent, and you pick Duncan Hayes? Again, I think he's a great player, but I just don't get this at all. A very perplexing move by the Boston Celtics, and the Utah Jazz at 3 have to be licking their chops. I do not think they expected Senseo DeSico to be on the board for them, but here we are. An easy pick to make here for the Utah Jazz. DeSico is one of the most unique players to enter the draft in recent memory. He's the youngest player in the class, not even turning 18 years old until September. He's a very raw offensive player, but he's an unbelievable defender. He's a very good athlete as well, and he has the chance to be the franchise player in Utah, joining a young core of Saddiq Bey, Zaquan Hobbs, and Jose Colon. Great pick, in my opinion, here for the Utah Jazz, who probably were laughing once they saw who Boston selected. That'll bring up the Sacramento Kings at pick 4, and they will select A.J. Alexander from Westtown School. So another high school prospect is off the board, and is Alexander going to the Sacramento Kings? Alexander is a very intriguing prospect. I'm not sure if he's more of a big man or more of a wing, because he's super versatile. He can guard 2s through 5s. So I think the Kings will try to figure that out, and I think his positional flexibility and his athleticism make him a very intriguing prospect going forward. So I think that's a pretty good pick there by Sacramento, who doesn't normally make good picks in the lottery. The only 2 teams ahead of the Sonics are the 2 new expansion teams, as we start with the Mexico City Capitanes, and they will end up selecting forward Prince Ezequiel out of Kansas. I think Ezequiel is one of the 3 best players in this draft class, and had he been on the board at 7, that would have been really hard for the Seattle Sonics to pass up, even if they had the bigger need at center. For what it's worth, the top 2 centers are still on the board for those keeping track. Ezequiel comes in as a 79 overall. He's going to be a great 3-and-D player right off the bat. One of the best shooters in this class. Great perimeter defender. He also has the versatility to play on the perimeter. Good athleticism as well. And overall, I think he's the best player on the board. So a great first draft pick for the Mexico City Capitanes. Montreal Royals, with their very first selection, select center Minka Afamefuna from Nigeria. Afamefuna is a tough center, 6'11". He's a little bit rough around the edges on offense. He needs to improve on his touch around the basket. He can kind of space the floor, but I think he needs to improve that mid-range shot. But early on, he's going to be a big lob threat. He's a very good interior defender. Overall, a pretty solid pick here for the Montreal Royals as we get to the Sonics selection. Here at number 7 overall, a number of talented players still on the board. The draft board has played out pretty well, largely in part by Duncan Hayes going number 2 and bumping all of these top prospects down. Obviously, a number of teams are interested in the number 7 overall pick, so I figured it wouldn't hurt to do some due diligence and look at the trade finder. We also very well could make our move for a superstar, and if we want to make a splash and get a guy like a Jason Tatum or a Brandon Ingram, or God forbid, Giannis Antetokounmpo, now would be the time to do so. After really thinking about it, I think it makes the most sense for us to keep this selection at number 7 overall. Yes, superstar players don't grow on trees, but I think adding another young piece to the core and foundation of this basketball team will do as well. None of the trades in the trade finder really interested me all that much, so we're going to keep this pick and select a player right here. Now the question is, who will we end up selecting? And there are a number of talented players for us on the board. Uzama Chukwumereji, the center out of Georgetown, would be a perfect fit. Cameron Hunter and Vesuslav Zvenmanis are also two of the most NBA-ready players in the entire draft class, so I really don't think we can go wrong with any of those three prospects. But with all that being said, with the 7th pick in the 2024 NBA draft, the Seattle Sonics select Uzama Chukwumereji from Mabor, Senegal, and Georgetown University. He has been our target all along, and I think you guys would probably agree with me. So it looks like Uzama Chukwumereji will be the starting center of our Seattle Sonics going forward. And as I've been preaching, I think he is a perfect fit for us, coming in as a 77 overall. He's 7 foot, 260 pounds with a 7'8" wingspan, and he's only 18 years old. Not only do I think he's going to be great down the line, but I think he's going to make an immediate impact right away. He's got very good touch from inside 15 feet. He can shoot the mid-range. He's obviously great around the basket and is just a powerful human being. He grew up in Mabor, Senegal, the same town that former Cleveland Cavaliers center Yusuf Diafafa-Fobo grew up. And I think Chukwumereji is pretty much a better version of Big Fafa as we knew him back then. This kid is a freakish athlete, added on with, again, his unbelievable size and length. He's going to be a productive defender early on, a good shot blocker, and he can make the splash play on offense. Of course, we know his brother quite well, Bwana Chukwumereji, who stands at 7'6" on the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I expect the two of them to have a nice little rivalry going forward. But apparently, according to Rob Mahoney, it could impact our chances of re-signing Buzz Wigginton, which makes no sense because he's our franchise player, and he's literally on a team option that's going to be cheap. But whatever. Overall, a great pick for us. Welcome to the team, Uzama Chukwumereji. The Oklahoma City Thunder at pick 8 go with Cameron Hunter out of Virginia. There you go. So Hunter goes right off the board here to the Thunder. And as I was saying earlier, I think Oklahoma City really wants to get players who can help them win now. They did it with Jimmy Butler. Now they're doing it with Cam Hunter. Other than a lack of a three-point shot, I think Hunter should be able to contribute at a very high level early on. And if he can develop that three-point shot, he is going to be very, very good in a short amount of time, giving Oklahoma City another option along the wings. That'll bring up the Toronto Raptors here with the 9th pick. They have a very good young core, and they're going to add on to that with Vesuslav Zvenmanis from Latvia. I think he is a perfect fit for Toronto, who really needs some floor spacing. And why not go out and get one of the best floor spacers in this draft class? Last year, they drafted point guard Quinton De Colo with the 2nd overall pick. He looks like he's going to be their franchise player, so surrounding him with good fits like Zvenmanis makes a lot of sense. Joining a core featuring De Colo along with center Theodore Chukwa II and wing Scotty Barnes. All Toronto really needed was somebody who can help space the floor and provide good value on defense. Other than a lack of athleticism, Zvenmanis is a near flawless prospect, so I think that is a home run fit and home run value for the Toronto Raptors. If not Chukwumereji, he would have been our pick at 7. The Houston Rockets here with the 10th selection go with Timbaku Turamenko, the center from Japan. They got this pick earlier today from the Trailblazers in the Desmond Donovan deal. Turamenko is pretty much a more athletic version of Alperen Şengün. He's a very skilled offensive player, not great on defense. I think this could mean a Şengün trade is likely, as Turamenko is a slightly better version of him. With the Sonics still needing some depth at center, maybe they go out and inquire. With the 11th pick, the San Antonio Spurs go with Ode Ayotoro from Sierra Canyon High School, one of the many Sierra Canyon prospects who are going to be entering the NBA within the next few seasons, including quite a few in this year's draft class. I thought Ayotoro would not go this high, but I don't have a major problem with this pick for the Spurs. He's a phenomenal playmaker, good enough scorer, good enough defender. They do need a new point guard with DeJounte Murray being traded to the Sonics last year, and I think he can be their guy. The New York Knicks here at 12 stick with the theme of point guards as they select Spanish sensation Fabian Campal. This seems like a very Knicks-type pick to me, and I'm not trying to say that as an insult. Campal just seems like the flashy player who the Knicks would like. He's a high-personality, high-ego kid, but he's a skilled basketball player as well. He's a great passer, pretty good scorer, pretty good defender. I did not think he would go this high. He was a player who I thought would have a chance to fall to the Sonics' second first-round pick, and I thought he would have been a real target there, but instead he goes way earlier than anticipated here to the New York Knicks at 12, who look to add some more playmaking, along with two of the better big man playmakers in Nikola Jokic and Julius Randle. The Portland Trailblazers here at 13 are on the clock. Now, they actually proposed a trade here, which would give them a future pick and Otto Porter. I don't know why the Blazers would do that, because the Knicks are probably going to be pretty good next year, so I decided to veto the trade because that seems pretty pointless in Portland's perspective. So they're going to hold on to this selection, and they're going to select French forward Felipe Dupont, which I think is a really good pick here at 13. Dupont is the prototypical modern NBA forward. He's sort of the jack-of-all-trades, master of none. He doesn't have any major strengths, but there aren't many holes in his game either. He's a pretty good scorer, good playmaker, versatile defender, and with his lack of weakness, I think that really gives him a very high floor and should be a starter, if we're being honest, on this Portland team day one. I think that's a fantastic selection for the Trailblazers, who are looking to continue to add more of an identity. The Minnesota Timberwolves here at 14 go with Jabbar Sherman, the wing out of Duke. I thought Sherman was going to go in the top 10, so this is phenomenal value here for Minnesota at 14. This is a big offseason for the Timberwolves, with Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns both as free agents. Edwards is restricted, so he should be back, but Cat, he is unrestricted, so maybe the Jabbar Sherman pick will help convince him to stay. I'm not really sure. We'll see. That'll bring up the Miami Heat here at 15. They got this pick earlier today from the Thunder in the Jimmy Butler trade, and they go with point guard Armani Walker from Seton Hall. Walker is a freak athlete. He's one of the fastest players in the draft. He has one of the highest verticals in the draft, and with Miami being a pretty bad team, he's going to get a lot of playing time early on, whether that's as a starter at shooting guard with Giannis Kleber at point, or possibly as a sixth man behind Kleber and Hamidou Diallo. That'll bring up the Utah Jazz, their second selection of the day, and they go with forward Barclay Frost. Frost was a player I was targeting with our second first-round selection. However, I didn't think he was going to fall. This is around the range I thought where Frost would end up, and sure enough, that's where he goes. He's a pretty similar player to Marvin Bagley, at least offensively, so I think that could mean Bagley is likely out the door in Utah, and he'll be joining his fifth team in 4 seasons. Poor guy. The Orlando Magic have back-to-back picks starting at 17. They go with combo guard Emerson Cato Paul out of New Mexico. So the New Mexico Lobos get a player here in the first round. Cato Paul's a decent enough scorer. He's a pretty good defender. Not a phenomenal passer yet, but he does know how to get his teammates involved somewhat. So Orlando's adding some more talent at the guard spot. And then this pick they just got from Charlotte in the Jonathan Isaac trade earlier today. And they go with 7'5" big man Jimbo Jenkins from Zimbabwe. I know it says South Africa, but he's supposed to be from Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe is not in the game. He is a very good post defender. He should be a good lob threat early on. I'm not sure if he'll be able to develop into much more than that, but I think he could be a solid addition of size to Orlando. The Thunder, with their second first-round pick of the day, go with forward Sean Scott Sr. out of Florida. So Sean Scott Sr. looks like, this tough, gritty forward. He has the mullet, the full beard, the neck tat. You'd think he's sort of like, an intimidating Patrick Beverley type of player, but he's actually an insane athlete. He had a 42-inch vertical jump, one of the highest at the combine. This guy doesn't look like he can get up there, but he can get up there. And the Lumberjack is headed to the Oklahoma City Thunder. That'll send us to the Memphis Grizzlies here at 20, but they're not going to keep this pick for long. Clearly, the Knicks really want to trade away Otto Porter Jr. There was already a trade proposal earlier for him today, and now they're going to offer him here to the Memphis Grizzlies. I think this trade makes a lot more sense. The Grizzlies are still getting a future first-round pick back, and Memphis is a contender, unlike the Trailblazers, so I think they would appreciate adding a veteran like Otto Porter Jr. As for the Knicks, they get to move back on the board here with the 20th overall selection and add another rookie. They already drafted Spanish point guard Fabian Campal earlier today with the 12th overall pick, so we'll see what they do here with the 20th overall selection, and they're going to stick with the theme of adding backcourt talent as they will select Philip Walter Foden from England. So they're going international here with a European prospect. Walter Foden is a solid combo guard, only a 71 overall, largely because he cannot defend a fly. He's a good offensive player, but his defense has a lot of work. So if he can improve on defense, I think he'll be a good player, but for now, he is a liability on that side of the floor. The Denver Nuggets are on the board here at 21, and they go with Nathan Wilcox out of NC State. So as we got to the draft, it looked like Wilcox was getting some top 10 buzz, but clearly that was smoke. And I think that was a good evaluation on the part of these NBA teams, because I don't think he is a top 10 player in this draft class, and I think here at 21 is a lot more appropriate value. And I do think value-wise, this is a fine pick here for Denver. He has some similarities to a young Zach LaVine, similar build. You know, they're both gifted offensive scorers. They can jump out of the gym. I'm not saying he's going to become Zach LaVine, but there are some parallels. The Indiana Pacers here at 22 go with Jesse Treadwell. Phenomenal value pick here for the Indiana Pacers, who quickly had one of the worst futures in the league a couple years ago. Now they have one of the best. Treadwell is a fantastic talent coming from Brewster Academy, and I think he's a lottery talent in my opinion. Adding on that he's just 18 years old. Home run selection here for the Indiana Pacers. They have been killing it in the draft in recent years, and I suspect that they will be at the top of the Eastern Conference for a while going forward. The Portland Trailblazers back on the clock here at 23. They go with center Ramon Costas out of Mexico. Costas is another player who was getting some high buzz towards the end. I think I saw him around the 10 range in a mock draft I saw earlier. But again, I think this is a lot more fair value. He's a good rim protector, good lob threat, but other than that, doesn't have a whole lot to his game yet. So we'll see if the Mexico native can add some more with the Portland Trailblazers. Our rivals, the St. Louis Spirits, are up here at 24, and they select Alexander Falkenberg from Norway. So Falkenberg is off the board, so both us and St. Louis add some size at the center position. Falkenberg as well is not an overly gifted offensive player, but he's a good enough scorer inside. He's a good defender, good athlete. There are a lot of, traditional low post centers in this draft class. Falkenberg, another one. So we'll see if these guys can pan out. I think with their athleticism, they should be able to translate to the modern game, even if they don't provide the versatility on both ends of the floor that you hope for. The Pelicans with a very interesting pick here at 25, going with French point guard Harry Fisher. Fisher is the 7-foot unicorn point guard that scouts have been drooling over, but he is a highly skilled player right away. I don't think he has the versatility to move to the front court. I think he's just going to be limited to the back court. But as a 7-footer, you never really know what he can do. So I think this is a very intriguing pick here for the Pelicans. Certainly somebody the Sonics would have considered had he been on the board at pick 32, which, by the way, is coming up. The Indiana Pacers are back on the clock. They go with Darius Carr from St. Vincent St. Mary's High School. So the Pacers have pretty much gone the same strategy with each of their first two picks, grabbing high school wings, I guess hoping that one of either Jesse Treadwell or Darius Carr will pan out, and I think both of them certainly have the upside to do so. The Toronto Raptors, with their second first-round pick of the day, are on the board. We're only about 5 picks away, and there are a number of players who I still really like who are available, one of which was Duke wing Boogie McGuire, who unfortunately is off the board. It seems like Toronto really wants to go after floor spacing. They got Vyacheslav Zvenmanis at pick 9. Now they add another great shooter in McGuire, who's going to be a great role player. Good scorer, good defender, high athleticism, pretty good playmaker as well. I think when it's all said and done, he will definitely be better than the 27th best player in this draft class. The Lakers at 28 go with Will O'Neal, the Australian-born combo guard who most recently played for Milton High School. O'Neal was our target, so I'm very disappointed he's off the board. Now, I thought he was going to go more so in the late teens, early 20s. I was shocked to see him fall this far, and I thought about a trade up, but I decided not to, and obviously he ends up going here to the Lakers. He's a little bit worse than I had anticipated coming in as a 72 overall, but I still would have been very happy with him with the 32nd pick, so I'm pretty disappointed that he's off the board. The Lakers have back-to-back selections here at 29 as they go with forward Brendan Mendoza out of Kansas. Rock chalk. So Mendoza will join the Lakers as well, a 74 overall, a versatile defender who's also a good playmaker. He's not a great scorer, but the rest of his game is very impressive. So two pretty strong selections here for the Lakers, who have done a nice job of building in the post-LeBron James, Anthony Davis era. Only a couple picks away. That'll send us to the Washington Wizards here at 30. The Wizards for 2 years in a row have been major overachievers since the Bradley Beal trade. They went out and acquired De'Aaron Fox last year, and they're going to give him some spacing with Abraham Johnston Salazar from Tennessee. He was my next target and definitely would have been the pick at 32, but unfortunately he is off the board just a couple picks before us. Johnston Salazar is one of the better three-point shooters in this draft class. Good defender, good playmaking, and he loves to go for the flashy dunk. Many highlight plays in his career at Tennessee. He's pretty much the perfect role player, which is why I would have wanted him at 32. Only one pick away. That brings us to the Detroit Pistons, who go with Mikhail Budwajski from Latvia. I know his name is spelled Michael, but it is not pronounced that way. It's pronounced Mikhail. A very unique pronunciation. He's a great floor spacer, pretty versatile defender, decent enough athleticism, so a solid selection there for the Pistons at 31. And that brings us to the Seattle Sonics with their own first-round pick here at 32. A lot of the guys I wanted, like Boogie McGuire, Will O'Neal, and Abraham Johnston Salazar, have all just been picked. But there are still plenty of good players left on the board. We could always look for a trade, but if we don't, there are a number of guys who I would feel comfortable with selecting here, so I don't think we are in a bad spot at all. I did want to do my due diligence, however, and take a look at the trade market, see if there was anything that would entice me. Obviously, the trade offers are not going to be as good as, say, for the 7th overall pick, but there were some interesting ones that would involve future first-round picks coming here, which I don't mind the idea of. The offer that really tempted me was this one from the Jazz, a top 3 protected pick in 2026. I think the Jazz are still going to be pretty bad by then, but I just don't think that trade is realistic. I don't know why Utah would trade a future pick when they have probably the worst roster in the league right now. So I think rather than exploiting the system, we're just going to hold on to this pick here at 32 and select a player. But now the question is, which player will we look at adding? Could we go for some backcourt depth? We don't have a lot behind DeJounte Murray and Oscar J. Basile at guard. Do we look to add a wing? You guys know I build around my wings through the draft. Or do we add some more size? So with the 32nd pick in the 2024 NBA draft, the Seattle Sonics select Octavius Makon, a center from Sierra Canyon High School. So we have our second Sierra Canyon Trailblazer off the board, and it's a big man headed to the Sonics. Seattle has now used each of their first 2 picks on centers, but as you'll see here, Makon is a very different player to Uzoma Chukwumereji. This kid is about 6'9", 230 pounds, so a little bit undersized for the center position, but at 18 years old, he does have time to grow. And I think one word to describe his overall game is probably unicorn. He runs pretty much the point guard position for the Sierra Canyon offense in the way that he can run the offense, he can facilitate, he can space the floor, score from all 3 levels. The athleticism with this kid is off the charts. It's really hard to find a center of his skill set out there, so to be able to get him here in the late first round, I think is very good value. He does have a lot to improve on. I think if he bulked up, that'd be nice, particularly on the defensive end of the floor, because I do believe he has the length and the size to be pretty good on defense, but maybe if he can bulk up, maybe try to get a little bit quicker, that can improve his versatility, but I think the upside is definitely there. I'm not sure how much Makon is going to play as a rookie, as the Sonics do have Uzoma Chukwumereji and Jakob Poeltl, but there's a ton of potential here with Octavius Makon, and I think he's going to be a really fun player here at the next level. Now we've got the final 2 picks of the first round, starting with the Knicks, who go with D. Preston Jr. out of Kentucky. Preston was my next target. He was the guy I was hoping would fall to our next pick, so I'm kind of relieved the Knicks picked him now, so I don't have to worry if he's going to fall. Preston is a very talented point guard. He's a good scorer, very good three-point shooter, solid playmaker, and a decent enough defender. I think he's a pretty well-rounded player and should be able to contribute pretty early for the Knicks, who have used each of their first 3 selections on guards. The final first-round pick of the day belongs to the defending champion Philadelphia 76ers, who will select Cole Thompson, a forward from Clemson. one of Kyril Story's former college teammates at Clemson, is headed to the city of brotherly love. Thompson is a good interior scorer. I wish he was more of a floor spacer. I think he will certainly look to improve that, but he is a pretty good post defender, good athleticism. I think he's a little bit raw, but I do think he has the skills to be pretty solid. So that's going to round out the first round. The Sonics stay put at 7-32 and add some size with Uzama Chukwumereji and Octavius Makon. Overall, the first round was pretty exciting. Of course, the big surprise being Duncan Hayes at 2 to the Celtics over prospects like Sensio DeSico, AJ Alexander, Prince Ezekwesili, and Minka Afamefuna. Other than that, there weren't many mind-boggling picks, no mind-boggling trades, but it's good to see our Sonics really addressing a major position of need and 2 picks that I think are going to be pretty popular within the fan base. I don't think there's going to be much drama or anger from the Seattle Sonics fans on either of those 2 selections. We're going to move through the second round a little bit quicker now. The Sonics do own the 19th overall pick in the second round as the Panthers go with forward Xavier Fort. This guy with his afro and the mustache and the headband looks like he'd be perfect to play in the 1980s. The Lakers get forward Deontay Jones. I considered him with our 32nd pick. Another strong selection by the Lakers, who all things considered are having themselves a pretty good draft today. James Smith, the 7-foot power forward, is headed to the Miami Heat. Hopefully he can get himself a new haircut in Miami. I think that'd be pretty wise of him. The Dallas Mavericks had some size with center Harlem White out of Missouri, another guy I was considering with that 32nd pick, so he ends up going to Dallas. The Mexico City Capitanes, with their first second-rounder in team history, go with Preston Burnside, a 6'7" wing from Colorado. And the Montreal Royals, with their first second-rounder, go with Oswald Viklund from Maine. Oswald Viklund is already used to the New England region, so I'm sure he'll fit right in Montreal. Devin Garrison, Cabarro Jackson to the Pacers. That's a lot of names. So he is headed to Indiana. The Washington Wizards get Subju Ice, another big center, 7'2", and another high school born player. There are a ton of super tall centers in this class, and there are a ton of high schoolers in this class. Ku Tsubazaki to the Pelicans, a 5'11" point guard from Japan. So the Pelicans have had 2 picks today. A point guard who stands at 5'11" and a point guard who stands at 7 foot. Pretty wild. Ned Osborne out of Cincinnati heads to Orlando. He was a target of mine. Probably would have been the upcoming selection, but unfortunately that's no longer the case. The Knicks pick another point guard. That's their 3rd point guard of the day, not counting the combo guard they moved up for earlier. So that's 4. The Miami Heat select Arrow Randall, another high school player. They now have drafted 2 point guards today. The Sonics pick is coming up pretty soon as Porter Mathewson, a 7'1" center out of Michigan State, goes to the Mavericks, so they add another center here in the second round. The Milwaukee Bucks get point guard Chester Lemieux. That is fantastic value here in round 2. He was the next guy on my draft board who I would have picked. Probably not going to convince Giannis to stay, but that is a good pick. Coda Willington out of Wyoming heads to the Oklahoma City Thunder, so the Thunder are continuing to add some more talent along the wings. The 76ers get Christian Bass, a big 6'5" point guard out of the University of Arizona. Only 3 picks away, starting with the Atlanta Hawks, as they select Delvion Abdul-Jabbar out of UCLA, likely related to the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And then the final pick before us is Barney Dudley out of Drake, headed to the Denver Nuggets. So that brings us to the 53rd overall pick. The Seattle Sonics are on the clock. There wasn't a whole lot of interest in this pick around the trade market, so it looks like Seattle will hold on to this pick and select a player. There were a few guys I was considering here, but I really just wanted to take a shot in the dark on upside here in the second round, so that's what we decided to do. With the 53rd overall pick in the 2024 NBA Draft, the Seattle Sonics will select center Mbotwo Makushan Jr. from the Democratic Republic of Congo. So the Sonics have used their 3rd pick today on a center, which means all 3 of Seattle's picks will be on centers. We talked about Makushan earlier in the season as somebody the Sonics could take a flyer on for his upside, and the potential is definitely there. He comes in as a 72 overall. He has an A+ inside scoring, A+ athleticism. The athleticism is really why Seattle's making the pick, along with his length and size. He stands at 7'7". His wingspan has not been officially measured, but there are some reports that it could be as long as 8'9". To put that into perspective, the longest wingspan in NBA history, Manute Bol, his wingspan is 8'6". So Makushan's would be 3 inches more, which is just incredible. The athleticism being put on full display here in his EuroLeague games. He doesn't have terrible shooting form, but he can't really space the floor. And then look at this play. Look how high his head gets above the rim. I'm convinced he could probably touch the backboard. I mean, this type of athleticism and size and arm length should not go to one person. So, although Antopo Makushan is very raw, the ceiling is through the roof. And if Seattle can tap in his potential, who knows? He could become something. Boot Lampard out of Syracuse is headed to the Rockets. Only about 10 more picks to go. Again, these teams are really looking for shots in the dark as Ty Smith goes to the Nets. I thought about him. Would not have been a bad pick. Jose Harmenko, a 7'7" center from Sierra Canyon. Another Sierra Canyon player off the board. Speaking of big centers, here's Moses Cousins, who is 7'2", going to the Chicago Bulls. Brooklyn White, point guard, Missouri to the Knicks. Another player I really thought about. Had we not been so tempted by Makushan's upside, I think he would have been the pick. Nick Jokic out of Syracuse goes to the Charlotte Hornets, a bit thickly built forward at 300 pounds. JJ Bando from Cuba to the Spirits. He's a really good playmaker, and I think here in the 60s, that's not bad value. Ferdinand Lewis Alcindor III, another 7'7" player. I apologize for all the super tall guys. All the subscribers just want to make demigods, pretty much. Zaire Martin out of Florida State to the Wizards, another pretty solid pick for them. They've had a very good draft. Giovinco Piccini out of Italia going to the Memphis Grizzlies, the second Italian-born player off the board. Wilfred Jacobs to the Knicks. That is another point guard for New York. They have now drafted 5 point guards today. Cody Wang to the Los Angeles Lakers. 3 picks to go now. The Sacramento Kings get Winston Jones, another high school-born player. Considering he went 66, maybe he should have gone to college for a year, but he got that NBA contract. That's really all that matters. Neil Lynch from Savannah State goes to the 76ers, and the Pelicans with a pretty good pick here for Mr. Irrelevant, and Darnell Johnson-Jansen, who is going to come out as a 72 overall out of DePaul. So that's going to round out the second round. The Sonics stayed put with the 52nd pick and took a major shot in the dark with Mbodwo Makushan Jr., who has the potential to be very intriguing with his size and his length, but he's got a lot of development to do. But that's fine because we already have talent at the center position with our first 2 picks today, plus Jakob Poeltl. So I don't think Makushan's going to have to play a whole lot early on. Maybe this could be a draft and stash situation where we let him go back to Europe for a year or 2 and continue to develop there. Or maybe we put him in the G League. We have a number of options on what we could do with him. So that concludes the draft as we take a look at the rookie signings. Overall, a pretty good draft class for us. I think it's safe to say we no longer need a center now that we've drafted 3, and hopefully 1 or 2 of these guys can really develop into good players. Let's take a look at some drafts around the league, some notable winners and losers. I thought the Oklahoma City Thunder had a pretty good day, continuing to add a lot of talent on the wings, and obviously Jimmy Butler. Minnesota and Portland had a few very good picks with Jamar Sherman and Felipe Dupont. I thought the Wizards had a very solid draft. The 2 new expansion teams did pretty well too. Moving right along here, the Bucks only had 1 pick, but Chester Lemieux in the middle of the second round is fantastic value. The Boston Celtics were the biggest surprise of the day, going with Duncan Hayes at 2, which completely flipped the draft board upside down for everybody. The Miami Heat obviously going to look a little bit different with no more Jimmy Butler. Sensio DeSico and Barclay Frost is a great haul for the Jazz. I thought A.J. Alexander to Sacramento was a pretty good pick. And then look at the Knicks. They had 6 picks, 5 point guards, and their other pick was a combo guard. Interesting strategy by New York. I thought the Lakers had a really good draft with the hand they were dealt. They had a few really solid selections. The Mavericks, I thought, made the right choice at number 1 with Antoine Ingram. We'll see how he meshes with Bradley Beal and Luka Doncic. The Pacers had another fantastic draft as they are continuing to build for very, very solid future. I'm excited to see what Harry Fisher does with the Pelicans. That should be a very interesting pick. Toronto had a great draft with Jaden Manis and Boogie McGuire. And that brings us back here to the Seattle Sonics, who, in my opinion, unbiasedly had a very strong draft addressing our biggest need and getting 2 very good players and 1 major flyer in the process. So that's going to conclude today's episode. I hope everybody enjoyed. Make sure to hit the like button and make sure to subscribe. These draft videos take a ton of time and effort for me to do, so a like and sub would be greatly appreciated. Next episode will be free agency. Our Sonics have some tough decisions to make and a lot of money to spend, so I'm excited to see how we end up going about that. And then we will kick off season number 4 of the series in the following episode. Peace out.